Why exactly did Gol D Roger want to take down Rocks D Zebec, if Zebec also wanted to defeat Imu-sama? Currently in the ongoing Elbaf Arc, we're being shown the flashback of how Rocks D Zebec became such a legendary character, starting from when he tried to infiltrate Mary Geoise, where he directly faced the elusive Imu-sama, to his battle against the King of Elbaf, King Harald, and up to the moment when he finally formed his pirate crew, the Rocks Pirates, a crew we all know had the strongest members of their era. But during that time, the Rocks Pirates weren't the only strongest force at sea. There was another pirate who could match Zebec's power, and that was Gol D Roger. Because of the feats Zebec displayed in several chapters of his flashback, many people now say that Zebec was far stronger than Roger. In other words, in the eyes of some fans, Roger is becoming overrated compared to Zebec. However, if you ask me, Roger has already proven that he truly was one of the strongest. Think about it. During the times when members of the Rocks Pirates were on the brink of death or fighting for their lives, who was the person they remembered? It was Roger. During the Marineford War, right before Whitebeard died, he told Blackbeard that he wasn't the one Roger had been waiting for. This was also where we saw a flashback of Roger visiting Whitebeard before his execution. Kaido was the same. In his final exchange of attacks with Luffy, he suddenly remembered Roger, saying Luffy should just take Roger as an example, that even without devil fruit powers relying only on haki, Roger was still able to conquer the world. As for Big Mom's part during the time after she was attacked by Eustace Kid and Trafalgar Law, instead of remembering her former captain Zebec, it was Roger who suddenly came to her mind. Big Mom was puzzled by Roger's actions, his persistence in encouraging people to set sail. She blamed him for this new era of young pirates. And lastly, there's Shiki. We all know how deeply the Golden Lion Shiki was affected when he learned that Roger was going to be executed. Out of rage, he stormed Marineford alone, and that's where his fate was sealed. In short, there's only one thing implied by the actions of the Rocks Pirates, former members toward Roger. To them, Roger was someone special. If you think about it, based on the ongoing flashback of Zebec, what exactly is his goal? Is it really to take down Imu and the world government? Yes, on paper this does sound like a good thing, since it's also the obvious goal of the Straw Hat Pirates at the end of One Piece's story. Luffy will defeat Imu and the world government. But what's the difference between Luffy's goal and Zebec's? Luffy plans to bring down the world government in order to free people from its greed, from the way it oppresses various races by turning them into slaves, and from its corruption and exploitation of different nations. That's Luffy's goal, to give freedom to everyone. On the other hand, while Zebec also shares the goal of defeating the world government, his intention is different. Luffy wants freedom for the people, but Zebec wants to defeat Inuo so that he can replace him and rule the world himself. In other words, Zebec basically wants to replace the current tyrant with himself, and perhaps his son, Blackbeard, has a similar plan now. Blackbeard also aims to overthrow the world government, as Katarina Devon has already mentioned, but his goal is to rule over the world so that he can inflict suffering on all its inhabitants. This is exactly what Luffy intends to prevent. Yes, he and Blackbeard share the same goal of toppling Imu, but their intentions are different, and this is probably what Roger also had in mind. The possible reason Roger stopped Zebec from attacking Mary Geoise was because he knew Zebec couldn't defeat Imu. The people of the world would be caught in the crossfire if Zebec made a move at the wrong time. In other words, what Roger was thinking was that if Zebec attacked Mary Geoise and ended up losing, Imu would almost certainly initiate a great cleansing. It's possible that many innocent people would die. That's why, as long as he had the chance, Roger kept challenging Zebec, testing whether Zebec could actually defeat him. Because if Zebec couldn't even beat Roger, then he certainly wouldn't be able to defeat the final boss, Imu-sama. My reference for saying that Roger knew it wasn't yet the right time for Zebec to attack Imu during their era comes from what he said in chapter 966. If you remember the scene where Roger asked to borrow Odin from Whitebeard, he mentioned that 13 years earlier he had reached the last island in the New World, Lodestar Island, and there he discovered that it wasn't the final island, nor was it where the log pose pointed. If this scene took place 26 years ago, and Roger learned about the poneglyphs 13 years before that, then the timeline he was referring to was 39 years ago, 1 year before his confrontation with Zebec at God Valley. This means Roger already had some idea, during the God Valley incident, of what the possible implications would be if he went up against Imu-sama. Now you might be wondering, wasn't it 26 years ago when Odin joined the Roger Pirates? How could Roger have read the poneglyphs if what you're saying is true? Well, based on what Silvers Rayleigh said in chapter 507, they couldn't actually read the poneglyphs. It was because of the voice of all things that Roger was able to understand what a poneglyph contained. Meaning, it's possible that through this ability, Roger learned some information about Imu-sama. Anyway, I know what you're thinking. You're wondering when this flashback about the Rocks Pirates in Luffy's storyline will end. For comparison, During the Wano arc, when we had Odin's flashback covering the introduction of the Roger pirates, it lasted 14 chapters, from chapter 959 up to chapter 972. I'm not saying that this flashback about Loki will also last 14 chapters. Currently, we've already had 5 chapters in this flashback. Based on its pacing, I estimate we could get another 3 to 5 chapters, since it will almost certainly end at the events from 14 years ago, the year King Harald died. And that's really the whole point of why this flashback started in the first place. Harjudin asked Loki what really happened to their father. Right now, the story is still at 44 years ago. Anyway, that's our topic for today. I hope you enjoyed this analysis about the 2 strongest characters in One Piece's history. That's all. Peace.